Is that you've said something about the regime being very confident in that the worst is over in terms of the protest movement. I just want to indicate that when they said that, the spokeswoman or Buthaina Shaban said that immediately on the second day, Rami Makhlouf, the cousin of the president, came out and spoke in manners that are very clearly indicative that the sense of crisis is still very deep within the Assads. He even raised the idea that the instability in Syria is instability in Israel, and really exposed the entire sort of Syrian-Israeli unspoken alliance, basically, that have existed for a long time, and sort of deprived the regime of the legitimacy of the resistance ideology and whatever. So I think when you look at and examine the statements made by the inner circle, really within the regime, no, they do have a deep sense of crisis, and they do realize that the situation is not contained. Right now, they realize that their control of the country doesn't extend far beyond the shadow of their tanks. Anytime they enter into Dar'a, the city quiets down. They leave, the city goes back, and people take to the street and call the people want to topple the regime. So the reality is they have to keep tanks in the street to keep control, and this is not a way of saying I am in control. Because right now in Idlib, in sort of central Syria, we have the same situation in Dar'a. All of the communities in this governorate, the city itself, all neighboring communities have completely thrown away the security forces. They've burned down Ba'ath Party headquarters, and they're saying people want to topple the regime. In Al Bukamal on the north of Iraq, it's the same situation. So they're losing control of pieces of the country, and the only way they can keep their control is through tanks, and that's not control. This is really a very deep crisis.
Helena, you wanted to comment?
I'll just put in a couple of points about Iran. I think what Stephen Ammar said about Iran actually tracks with what I've been following thus far. Notice how in Iraq the Iranians have obviously, first of all, massively increased their influence and the extension of their power, and for them that is the big gain of the last 20 years, and George W. Bush fell right into it. But in Iraq, they have also maintained relations with all forces in society, not just the Shiites, and played forces off against each other in a very sophisticated way. I would expect them to do the same thing in Syria. But, of course, they do have the existing long-standing security relationship with Syria. And, it's not that, them doing joint training or military police training or anything is new. They've been doing it for many years. So maybe right now they have a few things to share in terms of, not shooting so many protesters, which, as Steve says, is good for humanity by and large. They, no doubt, are also sharing things as to how you spook and control, online social media activism, where they probably have more experience than the Syrians. So, that's what you expect. If you look at these four parties who were the traditional kind of bogey people of a lot of forces in this town, the Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, Hamas axis. The Arab Spring has had interesting, obviously, effects on all members of this axis. I think Hamas is coming out best of all because they have, if you like, won Egypt, and they're not going to lose Syria. There are different things happening in the Gulf and in Bahrain. So it's a time of great turmoil, but the Iranians are definitely in there as actors. The Turks are in there as actors. I don't think they're delighted about having to suddenly play this huge role. I mean, they just thought that it would be economic power and they would extend their wonderful, Turkish businesses right through the Middle East, just as they have done throughout the whole of the former Soviet empire, in East Europe and in Central Asia, and that this would just be a wonderful economic lovey-dovey thing, instead of which suddenly they're being forced to play an active political diplomatic role.
And another 3 seconds on Turkey. The Syrian-Turkish relationship is not a very happy one at the moment. Turkish officials have said a number of very critical things about the behavior of the Syrian government in suppressing the uprising. The Syrians have responded with sharply critical comments back to the Turkish government. And it really does seem that at the moment the Turkish government, the AKP, is interested in distancing itself from the behavior of the Assad regime.
Well, I'm afraid we're out of time. There's so much more still to talk about, so many questions we didn't take. But I want to thank our amazing group of panelists for giving us their insights. I'm so glad you said there's still an appetite for Syria.
Yes, clearly there
Wow.
is.